Okay, so give me a solution. A times B equals 12. What's a possible value for A and B? 6 and, not 6 and 6, but 6 and 2. Good. What's another solution? 4 and 3. What's another solution? 1 and 12. Perfect, right? I'm just looking for two numbers that multiply together to get me to 12. What about for number 2? What's a solution for A times B equals 0? 5 and 0. What else? What's another solution? Anything and 0, exactly, right? It could be 85 and 0. It could be 0 and 0. As long as one of the letters is going to be 0, then I'll get to 0, right? Because anything times 0 is 0. So then for part A and number 3, what would go in place of that question mark? Question mark times 1.08 equals 0. What does the question mark have to be? 0. What about part B? Taking 5 and I'm multiplying it by this, right? Like this whole thing in parentheses is like my B. That means that question mark minus 4 must be 0, right? Because 5 times this has to be 0. So what does the question mark have to be? Yeah, 4, right? If I just add 4 to both sides, right? Question mark has to equal 4. Let's use that same logic for part C. If I have A times B equals 0, that means that either A has to be 0 or B has to be 0. So if x minus 2 is 0, what does x have to be? 2. And if x plus 3 is 0, what does x have to be? Negative 3. So for this one, we have two solutions for x. Two solutions for x. What about in part D? What do we do for part D? Can I do what I did before? No. We're going to turn this in to this format. And that's why we've been practicing factoring. So if we're going to solve an equation where there's a product that equals 0, right? I have something times something, something times something. We know that one of those factors has to be 0. But what if we have something like this where our equation is not written as a product? It's not written as something times something anymore, right? Well, for situations like that, we can take this and we can factor it. So let's think about how we factor this. What do I look at first when I'm factoring this? When I want to turn it into factored form, what do I look at first? What do we look at first? So remember, my first times first has to give me this. So I know my first and first has to be x and x. But then how am I going to figure out what goes here and here? Where do I look? Yeah, look at that 12. What are the factors of 12? We just came up with them earlier. 6 and 2, 3 and 4, and 12 and 1, right? Which of those pairs could get me to positive 1? Which of those pairs could get me to 1 using addition and subtraction? How do I get to 1 from 4 and 3? Yeah, positive 4 minus 3. So that tells me my factors, x plus 4, x minus 3. So x plus 4, x minus 3 equals 0. And now we're able to solve that, because if I know this times this, right, x plus 4 times x minus 3, if that equals 0, that means that x plus 4 equals 0, or x minus 3 equals 0. So if x plus 4 is 0, what is x? Negative 4. And if x minus 3 is 0, what is x? Huh? Good, positive 3, right? Minus 4, x is negative 4. Plus 3, x is positive 3. Okay? So let's go ahead and we're going to graph this. We're going to graph this function. Can I show you guys how to do this on your calculator? Can you guys take out your calculator, please? If you don't have a calculator, there's probably one on a desk around you, or you could go to the back of the room and get one. Up there. Okay, so this takes a minute to figure it out. And some of you might have like funky settings going on, so we might have to change some things, but let me show you how we do this. So the first thing we want to do is we want to set our window. So see the little gray button at the top, it says window. I think it's gray on your calculator, it says window. Click on window. And on our graph that's given to us on our paper, what are the x values on your x-axis? Where do they go from? What number to what number? Huh? Good, negative 5 to 5. So my x min, my minimum x value is going to be negative 5. And my x max, the maximum x value, is going to be positive 5. And then it says x scale, x scale. So what am I counting by on the x-axis? Am I counting by ones, by twos, by tens? What am I, huh? Yeah, just by ones. So my x scale is 1. And then let's do the same thing for the y value. So look at your y-axis on your graph. Between which two numbers does it go? What's the smallest y value? What's the y min? Good, negative 14. And what's the maximum y value? 4. And what are we counting by? By twos. So our y scale is going to be 2. So x min, negative 5. X max, positive 5. X scale 1. Y min, negative 14. Y max 4. Y scale 2. That's just going to help the graph like actually look the way we want it to look. So now go to y equals. Go to the y equals button. And if there's anything in there, clear it out. If you have like multiple things, you can use your arrows and just make sure everything's cleared out. Should just have one equation here. It's under y equals. Y equals. Can I just go with 1? Okay. So under y1, we'll say y equals, and we have our equation right there. Y equals x squared plus x minus 12. So we plug that in. X squared plus x minus 12. Okay. Now, in theory, if we did everything right, we should be able to hit graph, and it should show you your graph. No? So something went wrong then. Did anybody get it to show up? No? Y equals x squared plus x minus 12, window, 5, 1, negative 14, 2, graph. Y equals mode. The other way you can do this is on Desmos too. Desmos is a little easier to do. Radian, degree, float, connected, sequential, full, Y equals, I think it's something to do with this. Maybe? Why is that happening? Settings. I don't know, I've never seen that before, Gracie, sorry. If you want me to try and fix yours, I can, but anyway, let's look at the Desmos version too. It'll be a little easier to see on here. Y equals x squared plus x minus 12. Okay. Where are the x-intercepts on this graph? Where are the x-intercepts? Where are the x-intercepts? Yeah, negative 4 and 3. Negative 4 and 3. Those are my x-intercepts. Oops, not 3, positive 3. Negative 4 and positive 3. What are the y coordinates of the x-intercepts? What are the y coordinates? 0. Good. Okay, it's negative 4, 0, and 3, 0. Okay. And if I look at that graph, right, I can also figure out, okay, my y-intercept is at 0, negative 12. My vertex was down here at negative 1/2. Negative 1/2 and like 12.25, so somewhere there. Then I've got this y-intercept here, so I kind of have a sketch of my line. Don't worry too much about that. Ugh. But how do the x-intercepts, how do those two x-intercepts relate to what we did in number 4? How do those x-intercepts relate to what we did in number 4? How is that related? What did we do in number 4? What does this part here have to do with this part here? And this, what does that have to do with this answer? The solutions, when we solved, right, when we said y is 0, and we solve for x, that is the solution, right? Those are our x coordinates of the x-intercepts. Okay, so when y equals 0, and y is 0, right, this is my y. When y is 0, the solutions for x are the x-intercepts. right? So these x-intercepts, right? We also sometimes call them zeros, or we call them roots. It's all saying the same thing, and it's just referring to those x-intercepts. It's where y equals 0. Y equals 0. Okay, so our factored form will tell us where our x-intercepts are. Okay. Right. Let's flip over to the other side then. Flip to the other side. Let's split this into 3 parts. Okay, and we have what's called the zero product property. Zero product property. Which says if A factored must be factored. The factored quadratic equals 0, then one of the factors must be 0 so that the product equals 0. And we use that, right? That's just saying, right, if A times B equals 0, then that means A has to equal 0 or B has to equal 0. And the same is true when we have two factors. If x minus p times x minus q, if that equals 0, then either x minus p is 0 or x minus q is 0. Okay. That's what we're saying. If two things are multiplied together and their product is 0, then that means that one of the factors must be 0. And we use that to solve quadratics by factoring. Solve by factoring. So the first step is to write the equation and make sure that we have, rewrite the equation so that it equals 0, right? We don't want it to equal 35. We want it to equal 0. We need to make sure that one side of the equation just says 0. And then once we have it set equal to 0, we can then factor the equation, right? Get it into that factored form. And once we've factored it, then we set each factor equal to 0 and solve. And it'll just be either a one-step or a two-step equation. It's really easy to solve from there. Okay, and then those solutions, those are related to our x-intercepts. X-intercepts. If a quadratic equation equals 0, the x-intercepts are the solution. Solutions, I should say. Okay, and that does not matter what form the equation is in. No matter what form the equation is in.